everyone. I'm Linda Nickell, and welcome to the Happiness Hour. Photographers meet here to connect, inspire, and create. My guests share tips, techniques, and the stories behind their favorite photographs. LindaNickell.com/happiness hour is where you'll find the schedule and you can sign up for our newsletter. Tonight's guest is Sally Lombard. Sally is a Minnesota-based sports and portrait photographer. Her work as a photography workshop tour leader has taken her to some of the most epic landscapes in the world. But her passion for action photography is on the field, photographing college football games. In tonight's presentation, Sports Photography 101, Sally will walk us through the basics, starting with gear and settings, how to make connections and gain field access, and the elements that make a good sports image. If you're on Instagram, you can find Sally at MNSAL Gal. So you're going to have to tell us what that is, Sally, but I think it's Minnesota Sally Gal. I don't know. We'll ask her just a second. With that, welcome to the Happiness Hour, Sally.
Hi, Linda. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here tonight.
I am so excited that you didn't say no. And I seriously, when I don't know people, I just assume they're going to say no to me. And a friend of mine recently said, "You're the only person that assumes people will say no," because it very rarely happens and it always surprises me. But it's like that asking somebody on a date, they're going to say no. But I reached out to you because I have kind of met you via the Women's Photography Circle. And what that is, I think it started, well, it is a Facebook photography group for women photographers. And there's a, a circle for each state. And I met you through that. And I think one day we might have had some little exchange, and I'm like, well, let's see who this person is. And then I jumped to your Instagram, which wasn't easy to find, but I found you because I'm a stalker that way. And then I noticed that you had some football photographs, and I figured out it was your son, but I kind of got the feel that you did more than just, a few snaps of your kid playing ball. And I've been looking for somebody for a while to do one on sports photography. And I thought I just have to ask. And I was fully expecting you to say thank you, but no thank you. And when you said, yeah. And without hesitation, I was just ecstatic. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Well, thank you for asking me.
Well, okay. So in my introduction, what did I miss? What would you like to add or correct? Because we met at 15 minutes before the rest of the gang came in the room. And so I just extract what I want to say. So, but I want to give you the opportunity to fill in the gaps.
Well, my Instagram handle is MN So my family calls me Salgal.
Okay.
I'm from Minnesota. I just was, when you started Instagram, I didn't know what it was going to evolve into and all of that. So I just like, well, I'm in Minnesota and everyone calls me Salgal. So that's how I got my handle. If you go to my Instagram page, I have a sports photography page on Facebook linked to there. And that's where I put mostly right now just the college shots. But no, I've just, when you messaged me, I was like, did she really mean to send this to me? And then when I messaged you back, I'm like, okay, I'm ready. So, so no, just happy to be here. And I'll do my best to get you all started in the right direction and we'll take it from there.
Great. Okay. With that, let's see if we can get your screen up in that one, we
All
practiced.
righty. We did practice, so.
And it was smooth.
Okay. So here we are, Sports Photography 101. as you can see, this is South Dakota. I am a team photographer for the University of South Dakota. A little more about me. My website's down at the bottom, but it's currently under construction, so I don't have it published yet. But once I get it up and going, I'll be sure to blast it and let Linda know as well. I am based in Minnesota, so you're probably wondering, why do I end up in South Dakota? But it's like Linda said, my son plays football at the University of South Dakota. They are called the Coyotes. I have taken sports pictures for so long. I thought, I like sitting here watching the game, but I want to be on the field. And so it took me a couple of years to make it, but I finally got down on the field, and we'll go through all of that a little further in the presentation. I do love to do landscapes and portraits as well. I had a pretty robust portrait business going before COVID. And then when COVID hit, I kind of just stopped marketing myself for that. So I'm starting to pick that back up again. I do work for Women's Photography Circle. I am behind the scenes a lot. I am an assistant on the Iceland trip. I've also assisted on a few other trips. I do a lot of behind the scenes. I run the Instagram page, that type of thing. So when you see Instagram, you know I'm the one behind it. I did have a goal this season to get published, and I've been published a few times. And these are the Argus Leader is the biggest newspaper in South Dakota. Midco Sports is like their cable sports network. Watertown Public Opinion is a teeny tiny newspaper, but they seem to appreciate photos. So when people reach out, I make sure that I come through. I don't want to ever say no when it comes to publishing a photo. So let's peek into my gear bag. I could have listed a million things here, and obviously I don't carry everything that's on this page in my bag at one time. Just using some common sense, I make sure I look at the weather. Are we going to be outside? Are we inside? Am I going to need these things? The things that I always make sure I have is memory cards, extra memory cards, and batteries all the time. But my favorite setup for football is actually the 400 millimeter, and that's an f2.8. I usually have that mounted on a monopod, which I love monopods because not only does it help keep your image level, your camera level, but it also it's a heavy lens, so it takes a big load off of having to carry. I mean, I don't know that I could carry that for a whole game. Usually on a shoulder harness, I have a 70 to 200 and like a 24 to 70. So I can get some really wide angle shots with the 24-70. I have a 15 to 35, but it's just personal preference. I prefer the 24 to 70 over that. I have shot like a whole basketball game with the 50 millimeter, so it's like, there really, in my opinion, I'm not going to say no right or wrong lens, because there are definitely not the right lenses for some situations, but that's my general setup is the 400, the 70 to 200, and then the 24 to 70. I just recently tried the 100 to 300 this year, the f2.8, and I really loved it, but the 400 has it beat in my opinion. So these are just things that the list on the side are things that I put in my bag when I know that, sometimes it's really hard to get on and off the field, especially at halftime. Everybody's trying to get off the field. So I'll have a couple snacks in my bag, water, things like that to help get me through. And now we're going to get into some of the meat. We're getting into it right away. So settings for the camera and generally how I shoot. Shooting sports, in my opinion, doesn't have to be a hard thing. Everybody gets so wound up with, oh, my camera has this function, that function. I can set it to this. It does that for me. But if my goal here tonight is if you're just starting out or you're struggling to get images that are clear, struggling with composition, that's really what my goal is tonight, to get you going on an easy path. And then once you get these techniques down, start adding on those other more advanced techniques. I generally exclusively shoot at an f2.8. The reason why I like 2.8 and most sports photographers do is it gives you such a shallow depth of field and gives you those nice creamy backgrounds. It allows you to have those faster shutter speeds because it lets in so much light. Now, f2.8 lenses are really expensive. That's the downfall. So if you don't have that, it's totally okay to use a 4.5, a 5.6, something like that. Just understand that you're going to have to probably bump your ISO up higher than you normally do. And then my shutter speed at a minimum for sports is 1/1000. And I'm generally at like 1/1250 in most cases, depending on where you are, inside or outside. So like a basketball game, I could probably get away with 1/1000. But if it's a dimly lit gym, I might bump that up. The shutter speed, the reason why it's so crucial to have a fast shutter speed is you want to freeze that motion and you want to be able to capture the crucial, the peak of the action. So you don't want to see, blurry parts and you'll see, I have included some photos of my old days where I thought, wow, this is great. And it's really not that great. So, but that's why it's really crucial. It's important to have a fast shutter speed. Your ISO, nowadays, these cameras can have an extremely high ISO and they handle it pretty well. You don't typically get a lot of noise. So I always shoot in manual. I'm at an f2.8. I'm at generally 1/1250. My ISO is always somewhere 6,000 something in that range. It depending on where I'm at and what the field conditions are like. And I'm a Canon shooter, so I also have a couple other settings on my camera that I always use. And in the additional settings there, Canon uses, their term is AI servo for action. So I always have it set on servo for action. I use single point, I have back button focus on my camera. So I've changed 2 of my buttons on the back of my camera. One does single point and one will be for eye, to capture the eye. I always shoot in high speed shutter. So I don't always like to shoot in high speed shutter because then that means you could have thousands of pictures at the end of the game that you have to go through and cull. But sometimes, depending on the play, if I know like the kicker is about to kick the ball, I'll throw it in high speed shutter and I'll follow him through that motion. There's generally not too many shots there and I can pick out the one I like the best. Kickers don't get a lot of love, so I like to get them in the action. On the back of my camera, I also turn my dial for my exposure compensation. So because I'm always on an f2.8, I can change my dial to that. So with my highlight alert on, I can adjust my exposure if I need to that way first. Then I will check my ISO if it's still flashing. But that's generally how I'm set up. I use case 2 or 4 for servo. It just allows the camera to track the objects or the people in the way that you want. And it's really controversial on my ISO. A lot of times I'm in auto ISO. I used to get to the field and struggle with how to set my camera. And 9 times out of 10, I'd be so worried that I'm going to blow something out of the picture, I'd have my ISO too low. When you're in, I'm fortunate, South Dakota plays in a dome, and I can set my ISO on auto, and it's doesn't really jump around too much. It's pretty consistent. Outside, I like to use auto. It saves you if, say, the field is half in shade, half in sun, and you're following the action and you start out in sun and then you're all of a sudden in shade. That's where one place that can really save you. If you don't like auto ISO, it's personal preference. Sometimes I will throw it into auto ISO and see what the camera gives me, and then I'll take it out of auto and set it myself after I've checked my highlight alerts and I've taken a few test shots, and then just know if you're an aperture or shutter priority. If you do change your ISO in that situation, just know that it will affect your shutter speeds and your apertures. So just make sure that you're aware of that if you do use those settings. Another thing that's a little personal preference is whether to shoot in RAW or JPEG. I would say 90% of the time I'm in JPEG. Sports photos, especially coming from inside a dome, it's not like you're going to edit them like a landscape photo where, you're going to be masking and pulling things out. And so again, neither is right or wrong. I 9 times out of 10 will shoot in JPEG. Outside, I might switch to RAW, especially in harsh lighting conditions. So I know that's a lot to take in. And as we go through, I'll kind of hit more of these points as we go along the way. So the field, let's talk about this. How do you even begin to know where to take a picture when you're on the field? Where do you stand? Where are you allowed to be? Where are you not allowed to be? It's pretty easy these days to do a Google search and find out what the court looks like, what the field looks like. You can see it at different times of day if it's outside, so you can figure out where the light's coming from. And it's also easy to do some research on the team and figure out, oh, these seem to be, the players that, are the heart of the team or get the most playing time, or, they're in the news, they got this award or something like that. So do a little bit of research before you get to the field so you can have a plan when you get there and know who it is you want to focus on, know where you can go, know the rules of the sport as well as the rules of the field. So that's really important too. I understand, like I've been on a court before where I had no idea what the rules were, where I've never seen this team, I don't know who they are, and I'm going to shoot them. Just a little bit of observation, you can surely find out who the top players are and, kind of the feel of the game and the emotion and things like that. So you just start clicking away. Another thing, arrive early and be set before game time. So, don't show up when the game's starting. Have your camera bag ripped apart, trying to get your cameras set. Have those go early. Have those set and ready. Act like you've been there before. If you don't know, find somebody that's credentialed or somebody who, it's pretty easy to tell. You don't want to interrupt a coach, but it's pretty easy to tell somebody who knows what's going on the field. Ask them, can I stand here? Can I be here? Officials will tell you where you can and cannot be. And if an official tells you, I would hope that you listen really well because they can kick you out. They can tell you to leave. They can tell you, you're done here. So those are all really important things to know heading to the game. When I say have a plan, go with an idea of what you want to shoot. show the beginning, the middle, the end of the game. If it's outdoors, know which way the sun is going to set so you know what side of the field you should stand on. Is there going to be a special event at the field that night? Capture those moments. Is there a player who's on the verge of, breaking a record or getting an award? Or, I shot one whole basketball game where he was a center. So he's the big tall guy. His father had passed away that morning, and he came to play in the game because this game had his dad would have wanted him to play, and win or lose, it depended on if they were going into the playoffs. That game, I took pictures of only him, and I made an album just for him. So I knew that was going on. So I had a plan going into that game, knowing that that's what I was going to do. If you go in having a plan, and sometimes it doesn't always go according to plan, but at least it will give you a better chance of being successful in your outing, like giving you a better chance of getting some of the pictures that you wanted to get. This is a little football heavy right now because I'm shooting football. We're in season. We have our first playoff game coming up this Saturday. So I know a football field really well. I know on the football field, I can stand in the end zones, anywhere in the end zones. I can go up to the 20-yard lines, but I can't go anywhere from the 20 on one end to the 20 on the other. That's the box for the team. The officials are in there. There's players in there. There's trainers. There's coaches. You can't just stand any old place that you want. And a high school game, I had an official tell me I couldn't be standing in the back of the end zone. And now I'm not saying I'm not standing in the field of play. It's behind the field of play, but I knew he was completely wrong, but I didn't argue. I just moved to the side. Don't go into a field, an arena, or wherever it is that you're shooting and be the one that's demanding or being the one that's hard to work with. That's the best way to not get invited back. You've got to pay attention to the rules. Lacrosse, I shot lacrosse for many years. A lacrosse ball is really hard and round, and they sling it from from their crosses very fast. You don't want to be standing behind the goal when someone is trying to shoot a goal. Be cognizant of those things. Be aware of where you're standing. I have been hit by a football twice. It's not fun. I've almost been rolled up on the sideline, and that's not fun either. So just really be aware of where you can be. In basketball, you're pretty much allowed anywhere on a basketball court, around the perimeter, except you cannot approach the score table. You cannot sit on the team bench. Like at our high school, they used to have chairs set up for the players, during the game. You can't just go and take a chair and sit there and take pictures, be smart about it. Sit a few rows back. Take your pictures from a little higher up in the stands. Baseball, a lot of baseball fields have fences. It's so hard. You will have places that have obstacles. So just have a plan. Go in. I know I shot a baseball game. I had my 70 to 200 on. I sat with my lens butted up right up to the fence. Sometimes TV stations are there and they have lifts. And sometimes they are nice enough to let you up in there, but that's just too high of an angle for me, so I don't ever do that. But it's really important to just know what you're getting into before you step on the field. So now the access, and I wish it were easy. I wish I could just say, oh yes, you can just step on the field, but you can't. But the good thing is you don't have to be shooting just professional sports. I'm going to kind of go down these by category here. At the professional level, in my experience, what I've found is that unless you are affiliated with a newspaper, a news outlet, you are hired as a photographer for the team, you have very little chance. One thing that you can do is here in Minnesota, we have They're called Bulldog Photo, and he is the photographer for the Timberwolves. They're our professional basketball team. And um, you can call him up and say, hey, do you mind if I tag along with you to this game? I would like to get some practice shooting. 9 times out of 10, he'll take you. So that's one way to do it. And then one way to kind of get in and get a feel for the sport and learn about it, learn the rules. You have an expert guide there to help you. He's really good about it. Not all photographers are like that. When you do that, have a portfolio. And what I mean by having a portfolio is don't send him just like a couple of pictures over a text. Have an actual professional looking portfolio that you can send him, and he can look through your pictures and ask him, these are the things I'd like to work on. Could I be able to do that? Give them a reason to bring you. For the college level, there's an assistant athletic director for communications, usually for each sport, especially at like Division 1. Division 2 I don't know about Division 3, but they are in charge of who gets to be on the field. And so in my situation, what happened is I tried and tried and tried for many years to get on the field while my son was there. And the AD at that time was like, nope, absolutely not. So I would bring my camera and I'd sit in the stands and I'd move around, and so I could find the best angle and get as low to the action as I could. And so after years of doing this, somebody finally said, hey, you know what? She deserves to be on the field. And that's what happened. So the AD reached out. I reached out to him. We talked. He said, absolutely. Why would I not want more pictures of my program? Come on down. I got a pass. And it's been history since then. Same thing. Provide him with portfolio. Give him reasons why you want to be on the field. For me, I had to really explain. It wasn't just about taking pictures of my son. My goal is to take a picture of every player that touches the field. Especially in football, that sport's a little different. It ends for these players at some point. It's not like basketball where you can play in a pickup league in your later years. When football is done, it's done. So if I can get a picture of that player on the field, something that he could hang on his wall for, and remember those days, that's my goal. So it wasn't about being there to take pictures of my son. It was for me. And it was for me to make sure that I'm continuing to learn and grow and get better at my craft. The high school level, it is the athletic director. And again, I know it's repetitive, same thing. Give them your portfolio, tell them the reasons why you want to be on the field. The beauty about high school is you can photograph a lot of sports. They have all kinds of sports. And where else would you get the opportunity to be able to photograph so many different types of sports? The beauty of this also is that once your presence is known and you've been around taking photos, these can turn into paid jobs for you very easily. Booster clubs can pay you. The school, they might have a little bit of money that they can throw your way for taking pictures. Parents, this goes for youth leagues too. If you're around at athletic events taking pictures, they can say, hey, if I hire you, can you take pictures of my son at this game, or my daughter, whatever. So this is really a learning ground. Like, this is where you can really work on your craft and get going. One thing about the youth leagues, just make sure that you reach out to either the coach or, like, usually there is a director of the youth league. You just don't want to show up on the field and be some random person taking photos of kids. I mean, that puts everybody's dander up. They don't, so make sure you have permission. They can send out an email and say, hey, so-and-so is going to be on the field taking pictures. So everyone knows it's out there. And this, again, much like high school, is a great place to practice and learn. You have a lot more freedom in youth leagues to be able to move around the courts and the fields. It's not so strict at that level. So it gives you, a few more opportunities than when you move up and higher in the ranks. Freelancing. So I call myself a freelancer for South Dakota. The reason why I do is because I am submitting images to the local press. So the thing about being a freelancer and sending images to a newspaper or a publication, be prepared to submit images in real time. Like, it's fun and great to be on the field taking pictures, but now when you're doing something like that, you've got to be on the ball. They're going to, not meaning that the second you take the picture, you have to send it, but on timeouts, at halftime, you're going to be on your phone doing quick edits, sending these to newspaper outlets so they can get it on social media, so they can get it ready for printing. And you also have to become a little bit of a reporter. Tell them what is important about the photo. Like, number 14 crossed the goal line. He scored the go-ahead goal against, North Dakota, something like that. Give them the purpose of the photo. And lastly, network. It's not easy. It's hard work. But if this is something that you really want to do and you want to make it, you've got to do that. Follow potential outlets on social media, follow other photographers that photograph the sports you're interested in, attend workshops, get your name out there however you can. It pays off in the end. It's just a lot of work up front, and you're going to hear no a lot of the time, and you got to just fight through it. You got to be able to fight through it. So now let's get into the photo. What makes a great photo? I've kind of boiled it down to 3 things in my mind. It's composition, face the front is what I call it, and action and reaction. And of course, there's things in between. But these are the 3 main things. What about this photo that you see here makes it a great photo? This was shot on a 400 millimeter at a 2.8, of course. This particular player hurdles tacklers all the time. I know he's going to do this. Maybe 50% of the time he has the ball, he's going to jump over somebody. I just know this because I've been around the team and I know. I did not know I was going to catch this photo, though, when he took off running. So the action is clear. Nothing is cut off. It's a good photo. This is what we're looking for, the composition that we're looking for. And we're going to get into it right now. Here's the one that's a little painful, that I don't really enjoy showing this picture on the left. No one would print that on any type of publication whatsoever. And at the time when I took it, I thought, oh, this is great. Look I got this lineman. He's down in his stance. This is awesome. Well, a couple of things. Let's really dissect this. First of all, linemen line up like this all the time. So is this like earth-breaking news? No, it's not. Secondly, he looks like he's been planted in the ground. His hands and feet they're just planted. It looks like he has 3 legs and 1 arm because I have the player behind him. His leg is just like, woohoo, here I am. Very distracting. And technically my ISO was way too low on this photo. It just is not a good picture. You cannot see his face. In fact, it's blurry where his face mask is. It's just not a good picture. Now, if we look at the one on the right, we can see his eyes. His arm is lifted and he's pointing. Yes, his feet are planted, but with his arm moving and we can see his face, his mouth looks open. It tells us there's motion there, that he is actually moving. And look it, I have a leg behind him again. But in this case, it's so less distracting because we're so drawn into his face and his arm that we don't see that teeny tiny little bit of leg that's showing. I'm not very happy about that either. But this, if you compare the compositions of both of these, I think you can see why the one on the right in the black jersey is a much more complete composition, a better photo overall. And we're going to move on to another one that I'm not so proud of. Basketball. I've done a lot of basketball over the years too. The one on the left is almost a good shot. His facial expression is pretty good. The guy's got the ball, but the ball is static. It's not moving. It looks like he has an arm growing out of the top of his head. I've cut him off at his ankles. So does he have feet? I don't know. Because we follow the line and, well, I cut him off at the ankles. So even if I were to crop in tight on him and get just like his facial expression in the ball, I don't have enough separation between him and the itty bitty piece of the player that we see behind him. And he would still have an arm sticking out of his head. So it's just really not a good photo. If we go to the right, we see same player, but this time look at the difference. He's fighting for that ball. That ball is in midair. He's got someone coming over his back. I can clearly see his face. I can clearly see their arms. It's just a much more pleasing photo, a better composition. Poor kid. He would not like knowing he has an arm growing out of his head. Okay. So here now we're getting into kind of some of the technicalities of taking a picture. Generally, I like being down low and pointing my camera upwards towards the players. In the first picture, the one on the right, I am standing with my camera on my monopod, standing as tall as I am, which is 5'6", aiming right at the players. And yeah, it's okay photo. It's nothing great. But then if you see the photo on the right, I am actually laying on my stomach and I have my camera pointed up at the players. They look taller. It gives us a better sense of depth of field. And it's just a much more pleasing composition overall too. I know there are photographers that lay down during the whole game. A lot of photographers are on their knees the whole game, which is usually where I am. You could lay down for a whole game, but just make sure the medics know you're okay. And the officials, sometimes officials don't like that. They'll tell you you have to get up. So just know that. And you're like, oh, I'm just trying to get the best angle, but that's what happens. Here's one I'm not proud of either. Of course, we zoom in on photos. We have a tendency to fill up our viewfinder. This photo proves right here, it's okay to back off on your zoom and capture the whole scene. You will crop 99% of every photo you take. So give yourself the room to crop. If your settings are on and they're good, you're going to have a clear picture. You shouldn't worry about cropping. Now, I also didn't know that 41 was going to jump in the air like that, but I was so focused on 33 running after the quarterback, I had started to zoom in because this is on the 100 to 300. And I thought, oh, if I had pulled back my zoom and continued to shoot, I probably would have had an amazing image, but it's ruined. And now we have someone with no head, so it happens. It happens. You're not going to get every shot. You just got to learn to live with that. When I mean face the front, what I mean by that is generally you want to follow the eyes and the ball. You want your players to be facing you. Nobody wants to see pictures of butts and rear ends from the whole game. So, the baseball player, I'm head on, look at his great facial expression. The ball, everything is clear. The basketball players, facial expressions, we see their hands. And I notice this is one of my basketball ones I just noticed. Number 11, his bottom hand is a little blurry. So I probably was a little low on my shutter speed on that one, but that's old. I can't remember what year that was. Anyway, and then when I tell you to follow the eyes in the ball, there's always the exceptions. So here we go to pictures from the backside. So here, the reason why these would be, acceptable photos for print. Here we have the quarterback throwing the ball. The ball is in the air. The only thing we can't see is where the receiver might be. So that's a downfall of that image. But look at that. O-line is working. They're protecting their quarterback. Was this the throw that gave us the go-ahead touchdown? These are pivotal moments in the game. And 24 here on his tiptoes, I think if football didn't work out for him, he would have a good, maybe ballet career. I mean, he can stop on a dime. It's always kind of inevitable that you get caught behind the action sometimes too. And so, while you're caught behind the action, make the most of it. Take the pictures that you can, and then hustle to the front of the action when you get the chance. So, again, just very cool, especially 24, just a really cool photo. That one was a big hit when I shared that one with the team. So here we're going to talk about setting the scene. You have a whole game to take pictures. So try and find other moments on the field to kind of create a story of the game. You want to have a good mix of scenes. Get, pre-game, portraits, players having fun. Find where the light is shining on them. Find fans, players' families, things like that. Try and curate a story of the game. So, it's rarely do you see teams come out for the anthem anymore and stand. So this was a really great shot where the whole team lined up and listened to the anthem before the game. The South Dakota player holding the flag that's running, his brother, they had a military appreciation day for the game, and his brother was in the military, and I think he was in Iraq or Afghanistan, one of those, and is not with us today. And he was the player that came running out with the flag, and he's running along the field and the crowd is cheering, and it was a very poignant moment. And he's looking up at the stands, and you get that feeling like, this was a special moment at that game. Portraits. Part of I call it my assignment at South Dakota. I take a lot of pictures of O-linemen. A lot of my images, almost all of my images, are used by the coaching staff. They send them out on emails to potential players, to other schools, whatever. They use some of them on social media posts, things like that. So I always try and snap portraits, usually when a player is coming on or off the field, something where they're kind of still moving around, maybe sitting on the sidelines after a hard play and they're taking a rest, something like that. So snap a few portraits during the game. It's a nice break from action, actually, too. Chasing the light. So, in a dome, it doesn't matter so much in an arena. But when you're outdoors and you have the opportunity on a bright sunny day, look, how the light just lights the players up. You can clearly see their faces. I know the kicker, you can't see the ball in that photo, but what I loved about it so much was that, they're watching the ball as it's going through the uprights to make sure it goes through the uprights. The light is just lighting up their faces. You can see what they're thinking in their face, you know. And the second picture with the running back getting the ball, just the light just came and lit his face up, and it, you know, he's got a firm grasp on the ball. He's running. It's a great, you know, action shot, solid action shot. Pre-game photos. A lot of times pre-game for me is difficult because they're warming up and, you know, they're doing calisthenic type things. You know, pictures fall into like two categories for me. Ones that mom loves and ones that would be able to be printed, you know, or one's a good action shot. You know, do I really want to take a picture of a kid doing jumping jacks? You know, like you kind of have to figure it out as you go along. So you look for other moments. So the player in the green jersey, this is a semi-pro team in Denver. These men that play still think they have a shot. Someone from the NFL is going to see them. He was probably like 40 years old playing quarterback, and he had warmed up and stretched out, and he was just kind of taking a walk down the field and he kind of talking to himself. And I imagine was getting himself in game mode. So it just like kind of presented itself as like just a quiet moment before the fury starts. You get a lot of players like 76 here. He's kneeling, praying before the game. You know, the flag is behind him. The stands are full. It's just a poignant moment in time before the game. Behind the scenes, you know, at South Dakota, my home field is really tight on the sidelines. There's not a lot of room to move around. And the other thing is I cannot move from one end zone to the other until there's a timeout. So it's not like I can just be walking along the sideline, taking pictures of the players as they're sitting on the side. But a lot of times at away fields, and especially outdoor ones, their sidelines are so much bigger. There's so much room. And that's when I take advantage of shots like the O-line group. They had just come off the field. Their coach is coaching them up. They're drinking water. They're hanging out, you know. So that's a picture a mom would love. That's a picture the program loves. They can put that on a, you know, email or something. And cheerleaders, you know, cheerleaders, the minute I come around with my camera, they know how to pose. Girls know how to pose when the camera comes around. So I always try and just snap a couple of cheerleaders. I do go more like individually on the cheerleaders too. And when they're doing, you know, getting tossed in the air and things like that. But, you know, this is all part of curating parts of the game, a story of the game. Now what we really came for is the action shots. And these, I'm starting out with a bang because these are two that are not great, but we're going to talk about them. Action and reaction. You know, it's one thing to take pictures of the action, but then you want to keep, after the action is over, keep following the players because you want to be able to capture some of their reactions. You still have some action that happens after the play. So a couple of these these would just have been really great shots, but there's always going to be someone on the sidelines. There's always going to be someone that's in the way, something that's in the way. And the best way to get around that is knowing where to position yourself on the field. So, you know, number 4, he just intercepted that ball and he was jumping up and cheering. But look at, I got, you know, the lady in the Yote shirt, she's cheering, which I actually don't mind. That's very cool. But then what is the lady in the middle? She's holding some big board, you know, I don't know. It totally distracts. You can't even really see where the football is. So if I had just moved my position, I could have probably, you know, worked around those distractions and I would have had a much more successful image. On the right, 82, the ball was intended for him. It got intercepted. he's fighting for the ball with his fingertips. Should have grabbed it a little harder. But look at, I have a cameraman smack behind them. And again, same thing. Had I just positioned myself a little differently, I could have got a better angle without the cameraman behind. So things to think about. And I know you're not always going to know where the play is going to happen or where it's going to go, but just things to think about. You're not going to get every shot. You got to live with that. You just got to live with that. Following the ball, action and reaction. I have action and reaction in one photo at the same time. I couldn't ask for anything better. We've got an interception, 33, intercepted the ball. Yes, I can't see his face. I don't really need to in this one. His arm is up. He's celebrating. Number 2, his teammate is like, yes, he's pointing because now our offense is going to take the field and the ball's coming the other way. So that was a really great moment. It was a lot of jubilance around it. And if you follow the ball, the action will come to you. These are just really clean action shots. They help to tell the story of the game. Here, the quarterback throwing the ball, everything is clear. We can see his eyes. We can see his face. Number 5, imagine that he's hurdling someone again. So that picture, if I actually had kept going after number 5 had run over that poor player on the ground, it looked like he was herding a pack, or he was in the lead of a pack of horses. They were all chasing after him. So it was a pivotal play in the game. He ran that, I think, for a touchdown. I mean, and it was a long one. So that was a pivotal play. Not all action shots have to have the ball involved. Defense just can be a lot of fun on their own. If you see number 54, he is the main focus of my shot there. He's a D lineman. He's chasing after the running back with the ball. I did cut his helmet off, which is not good. But I left the picture like this because what I would normally do is crop that down and just focus on 54 a little more. But that's what happens. You kind of lose some of the shots. Here we have another D-line image, and he's knocking the helmet off of that poor guy. I mean, it's a physical, violent game. So you get to see moments like that as well. And here we have number 5 doing another hurdle. So I know, like I said earlier, I know this about him. I can learn to expect it. Generally, when he does that, these are plays that have a lot of yardage gained. He's either scored a touchdown, but they're also just fun. He's a really physical player. Here in the end zone, it's 4th down. We need that touchdown. Obviously, we didn't get it. So this would be submitted to the newspaper. This is the play, 4th down play that didn't convert. Oops, did I miss it? Nope, here we go. So reaction. This was in the first round of playoffs. It was a high school football team. They had led the game for most of the game, and they lost. I generally avoid staying away from injuries. Like, I don't take a lot of photographs of injured players, things like that. I generally don't take a lot of players crying, but this was such a heartbreaking moment, and it really shows how much this game meant to those players. So this is a really good, reaction to losing. But on the good side of reactions, I think he changes his number all the time. I don't know, 27, I think he is there. He had just scored his first collegiate touchdown. He was just screaming with joy. And the sun came up, lit up his mask. His fists are clenched. It's just shows the emotion of that moment for him. And then we have some of our defensive backs celebrating after getting the other team off the field and three and out. So these are just moments for you to consider, like what makes a good image? What makes a good story about the game? These are things that I look for. These are um, tell the story of the game. It was the one with his finger up, wagging his finger. He's like, nope, you're not catching that ball on me. That was a game ending drive for Youngstown. The game was a wrap after that. Um, Here we have two players hugging, just the emotion of the moment. And then also include your fans. Um, this was a huge, huge game, huge touchdown. You can see the whole stadium is just cheering and going crazy along with the players. It's a great shot, great things to look for. So I know I talked a lot. We'll open it up for question and answers. On this page, I have some workshop resources and who they are and what kind of brand of camera. Usually a brand of camera sponsors these workshops. And you don't have to go to one that's just your brand of camera, but it helps, to know ahead of time. I did the summit workshop in Denver. It was intense. It was very good. I learned a ton. And I'm not really going into editing on this because that could take a whole whole other hour to do. Um, but I'm happy, I've pretty much shot it all. I'm happy to answer whatever questions I can. If you have any specific, questions you want to ask, I'm ready.
Let's start with Karen. And Karen photographs basketball team for a small middle school. Her question is, do you have any thoughts on when to show the whole body and when just to show the upper part of the body?
So the general rule of thumb is you don't want to cut off at a joint. So don't cut off wrists, don't cut off fingers, don't cut off at knees. Try and get like the thigh and up if you're going to crop. The one basketball picture I had where I had them cropped at the thigh and they're reaching, and the one player is behind and going to swat it. You pretty much know that they're going towards the basket. So you don't always have to include the basket in your shot either, if that's the kind of shot you're talking about. So, but you really, really just don't want to cut off at a major joint.
Rebecca's question is, would you consider removing some of the distractions using Lightroom or Photoshop?
No, I would never remove a distraction in a sports photo. The reason being is, say the newspaper says, do you have a shot of that? And that's the only shot I have. It has to be the real time shot. We can't manipulate the sports photos. It's the moment in time. That's what happened. And that might not be the best picture that anybody got of that shot, but that we don't want to change the metadata or change the things that make that photo what it was in that moment of time. So no, if you're going to use it personally, hanging out, like say that was your son in the picture and you want it personally yourself, yes, then I would remove it and, it's not going to go any further than that. But generally, no, I just move on to the next photo.
Rebecca has another question. What is your arrangement with, I guess that's University of South Dakota, regarding copyrights, releases, etc.?
So anytime the NCAA gets involved, it's tricky. But nowadays, everybody has a camera, right? They have their phone. You can bring into venues, they say a non-professional camera. So that just basically means one with a lens that doesn't detach. So they really have lost a lot of control over what pictures are out there. As far as me taking pictures for the university, after the game, I edit my photos, I put them in a drive, I send them to the AD of communications. They become the intellectual property of the university. However, because I am not an official employee of the university, they are still my images, so I can still use them however I choose.
Um, okay, Gail slipped this in. Great pictures of sports, especially football. Are you going to photograph South Dakota this coming weekend? Are they having games over the weekend to see which teams are going further?
Yes, so Saturday I'll be back on the field. It's the second round of playoffs. Um, and uh, if they win, they'll play the following weekend. So it's play until you lose right now.
Okay. Um, I'm going to slip in this. I looked on Google just out of curiosity, the town you live in to the University of South Dakota. Do you drive 5.5 hours
Yep.
every week?
Well, so in case you didn't notice, I know it was football heavy because I meant that's what
Yeah.
I'm doing right now. It was also heavy with number 76. That's my son. I
Oh,
don't get to feature him a lot, so I kind of took this opportunity to feature him. Um, if he wasn't playing there, I would probably not be there, to take photos. I would still be at our high school taking photos. There's a couple of community colleges around me that I would be taking photos for. Um, so no, I would not be doing that if I didn't have a reason.
that is impressive. Okay. So Donna's question is, can you talk a little more about your choice of case 2 or 4 in servo mode? Why select one over the other?
So I have probably fiddled with those cases. I don't even know for how many years now, trying to figure out which one I like the best. Um, so if you have a subject, so let me back up a little bit and start. So the play is about to start. And on this particular shot, I'm going to follow the ball. I'm going to follow where the ball goes. I'm going to point my camera, starting at the center, it goes to the quarterback, wherever it goes from there, I'm going to follow. Um, I think three, if you're on case three, say I'm locked on to who I want with the ball, but somebody runs in front of him, it's going to switch to the person that ran in front. Now I've lost the ball. Case one is so generally broad, and sometimes I feel like I lose track with case one. Case two and four seem to be the two that work the best for me. They seem to lock on. I have my camera right here. Let me tell you what I'm set on right now. Here we go. Um, Also, two players change their speed. They accelerate or decelerate at, like they're never jogging, but it seems like they're running slower and then they whoosh, take off. And I feel like case four, which is what I'm on right now, really there's no lag from when I'm locked on and they're slower to faster or vice versa. So two is the one that will continue to track whoever I'm focused. So I have my back button focus. I have this button. I don't know if everybody can see, but this button right here is my back button focus. This one over here is for my auto eye focus tracking if I want it. I will lock this onto my player and follow them. If somebody cuts in front, it's going to stay with where I had it locked on. Three, it does not happen that way. So that's I don't know if that answered your question. If you have, like a follow up to that, just let me know.
Carolyn slipped in here. Do you always use monopod or handhold?
Depends on what lens I've got on. The 400 is really heavy and I would not want that around my neck or to hold it the whole game. So it's always a monopod, never a tripod on a field. Um, I have a shoulder harness. I try not to hang anything directly around my neck. I have a shoulder harness with, so I have two, I have a Canon R6, a Canon R6 Mark II, and a Canon R5. Between those three, I've got one on the monopod and two on shoulder harnesses.
Okay. So there was some discussion in the chat. But I want to put the question in front of you. It's from Kevin. Keep in mind, he's a Nikon shooter. So, how do you use exposure compensation when fully manual? You've set aperture, shutter speed, and ISO. What is left for Canon to adjust?
Well, this is where I get to It doesn't have to be so hard to take a photo to get your settings done. My this dial right here on my Canon is usually the one that I rotate through photos or whatever when I'm looking at my viewfinder. Um, my exposure compensation, if I have my highlight alert on and I'm still blowing things out, if I'm not quite happy with the result that I'm getting when I have my initial settings, it's just easy to change my exposure compensation one way or the other, just to stop or a click or two to help you know get, I don't know how to say it, to help not blow things out, to help make a quick adjustment without having to reconfigure every other setting. Um, there, it's just typically I'm not messing with exposure compensation a lot. It's usually at the beginning of the game when I'm trying to get my settings dialed in.
Okay. Oh, okay, here we go. Scooting again. Rebecca's slipping in. Do you use any sharpening in post-processing given the high ISOs you're using?
Yes. So, believe it or not, if I'm not using eye tracking and I'm using single point focus, I pretty much aim for like chest, chin, something like that, and I take my photos. I know that, like, in my focal area, I have a good like foot and a half around that person to play with. So I just two, if you have autofocus, it can chew through your batteries. Especially the way Canon works. If I have autofocus on for a whole game and I'm using that button focus, it's constantly trying to grab on, and it will just eat through your batteries. So I take my photo, I bring it into post processing, and believe it or not, I sometimes I'm really on my game, and really the only adjustments I'm making are maybe some to exposure. I use dehaze and clarity a lot. Those are my two main editing functions that I use. Um, every once in a while, I do run them through like a denoise, but not very often.
All right, Sally, thank you so much. You survived.
I survived. I know.
Okay, so
Glad.
I have to say, because we're gonna make this about me for a second. Um, I was giggling when you were showing your pictures that you're not exactly proud of. And I was exchanging your, hand out of someone's head to a branch out of a bird's head to missing, feet. So everything that you were talking about humans, I was meshing it with my bird photography. So I really enjoyed that you shared, the pictures that you're not the most proud of, but they're learning. This is, it's kind of a way to learn what not to do by Sally. So thank you for including those. Those were perfect. So
Well, trust me, I even asked Julie, who's here tonight, I'm like, I am going to put this picture in, and it's kind of painful for me to do this because, once it's out there, it's out there. If somebody sees that, they're like, oh, she took that picture. But, I, everybody starts somewhere. You've got to learn and see what the difference is.
yeah, I mean, some of your bad pictures, I'm thinking that'd be great. I'd be happy to get those just sharp, and, it's clear, there were a lot of, but we learn from our own mistakes and you don't make those mistakes again. So, those bad pictures are lessons for us. So thank you for sharing those.
Well, and one more thing I wanted to say, I meant to say this at the end. Like I said, we all start somewhere. The most important thing is don't compare yourself to other photographers. Like, what you should be comparing is from one game to the next. Am I getting better? Am I getting the results I'm trying to get? If I see somebody's picture that I like, instead of saying, well, their picture's better than mine, I say, you know what, I like that and I'm going to figure out how to shoot that. You kind of change your mindset. Um, it's not, it is very competitive. Sports photography is very competitive, but it's not, you will just beat yourself up if all you do is compare to someone else. So just, keep working on your own craft and
That's right. Well, I want to thank you for coming and sharing what you know. And hopefully, some of your tips will um, be applied the next time we're chasing little kids at their little t-ball games, or we have an opportunity to get on a field and get to play in the majors. So thanks for doing this for us. All right, next week, wildlife photographer and OM system ambassador Lee Hoy will be here to present making the most of the wildlife photography experience. Until next time, go out and create something beautiful, and I hope that we see you again soon.